Among full-size luxury SUVs, there's probably not a more misunderstood model than the Lexus LX series. People compare it to the Mercedes GLS or the Cadillac Escalade or the Range Rover, but I think they're kind of missing the point of this off-road beast. So I'm gonna tell you why, with 5 things that I like about the Lexus LX 600 and one thing that kinda irks me about it. Wore nicer clothes today just for the Lexus LX 600 because I wanted to look like I belonged in a Lexus LX 600. Didn't work though, did it? All right, the first thing I like about the Lexus LX 600 has to be the capability. If you didn't know, the Lexus LX 600, which is based on the Toyota Land Cruiser, is one of the most capable off-road vehicles on the market. And I don't mean like in its class, I mean period. It's one of the most capable off-road vehicles ever made. It's a terrain-conquering monster featuring multi-terrain select with 6 different terrain modes. And the more I say terrain, the cooler it gets. It also has crawl control and it has automatic height adjustability so it can better clear off-road obstacles. When you're going slow in sort of 4 low, you can lift this thing really high off the ground. And it's kind of hilarious because you don't see that very often in luxury SUVs. The multi-terrain monitor can show you what's all around the vehicle, especially in the front corners, as well as what's underneath the Lexus LX 600 and what's sort of just behind the Lexus LX 600. It's doing what Lexus already implements on some of its other models, where as you back up, the camera sort of scans what you're going over and it sort of fills it in the like surround view camera, which is really cool. But then the Lexus LX 600 uses that same technology to give you a better view of what's around and underneath the vehicle, which like makes perfect sense for a giant off-roader. And the lower screen in the cabin shows you the vehicle's sort of tilt angle as well as throttle and brake calibration and where the power's going and if your diff is locked and all that kind of good stuff. It also shows you the height if you manually raise the Lexus LX 600 off the ground even higher. So it has like a function. It's a little bit gimmicky, but it also is admittedly kind of cool. The adaptive variable suspension is what sort of allows this giant body-on-frame truck to ride acceptably luxuriously on the road. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a giant truck, and so it doesn't have the body control of something like a Cadillac Escalade, but honestly, I don't really mind all that much. There are reverberations like you get on a body-on-frame vehicle, body-on-frame vehicle, but that's understandable, and I think if you come into this expecting it to be like a Lincoln Navigator or a BMW X7, then you're kind of missing the point. The interior is also nice, not because it's flashy or gimmicky, but because it just feels high quality in that sort of Lexus way, with pretty good materials throughout and the fit and finish is exceptional. As a flagship, you have pretty much every option you could want. This Lexus LX 600 F Sport model is optioned up to about $107,000, which means it comes with heated and cooled seats front and rear, which is nice. The girls appreciated that, as well as a heated steering wheel. This one has the sort of cold box center console, which everyone in the family thinks is impossibly cool, that you can put drinks in there and they stay cold. It's a good place to store my white Monsters. Yo, what's up, Monster? Sponsor me. And more importantly, it has the Mark Levinson audio system, which if I'm not mistaken, I think in this model has a 2,500 watt audio system. And like 3,000 speakers. It doesn't actually have 3,000 speakers. I'll put the actual number on the screen, but it's incredible. It is one of the most powerful audio systems I have ever heard in a test vehicle. I'll leave all the fidelity stuff to Savage Geese. Go check out their channel for all that kind of information. But suffice to say that when you're driving down the road, pumping out your 90s and 2000s rap music, this thing gets attention. I'm pretty fly for a white guy. It has the aforementioned comprehensive camera system, as well as the expected wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It has a color heads-up display, as well as a fully digital sort of gauge cluster. And while they look nice, they are getting a little bit old. And you might think that I'm gonna ding it for that, but that's honestly not my one complaint. They could be flashier, but that's not my complaint. They are functional, and I'm sure they'll work until digital gauge clusters are no longer a thing, so I'm not gonna complain any more about it much. It's functional rather than pretty and attractive. It's like reliable and bankable, but you don't necessarily lust after it. It's kind of like Steve Buscemi.
Because I'm a genius.
You always know you're gonna get a great performance, but like, that guy looks weird. It's not in the same interior league as the Cadillac Escalade, but neither is the Escalade in the same league when it comes to going off-road. And you could say, well, how often are you gonna go off-road? And I would respond with, well, how often are you gonna show off like everything the Escalade can do, like the Cadillac Escalade V? I mean, you're gonna floor it off of every stoplight? Don't answer that. You probably are, you freaking dork. But like what I'm saying is, I think the off-road functionality is kind of a cooler ace in the hole than something like the Escalade V's 9 billion horsepower small block. Power under the hood is not a V8, and that's not a problem. The Lexus LX 600 gets Toyota and Lexus's new twin-turbo V6, the 3.5-liter unit. It's actually a 3.4-liter unit. And in this application, it makes 409 horsepower and 479 pound-feet of torque. That's all running through a 10-speed automatic transmission. This new powertrain with the automatic start and stop nets big increases in fuel economy. So compared to the outgoing Lexus LX, this one is vastly more efficient. Now that's a relative term, but in driving a lot of stop-and-go suburban driving, I was seeing around 17 miles per gallon, which is exactly what Lexus lists for this car in the city. That's significantly better than something like our old Chevy Suburban, and it's way better than the previous Lexus LX, which had a gas mileage in the city of like 11 or 12 or something. It was really bad. While a more powerful version of this engine does exist in things like the Toyota Sequoia, this one never felt like it was wanting for power. 479 pound-feet of torque is a lot, even in an SUV of this size. So whether or not a more powerful Lexus LX comes along, I don't really care. I think this is a powerful enough power play. I also really like the exclusivity of the LX 600. It's a big truck, but it's a big truck that's based on one of the most capable vehicles of all time. No other luxury SUV can claim that level of pedigree, except maybe Range Rover. But unlike Range Rover, the Lexus LX will still work a week after you get home from the dealership, and a year after that, and a decade after that. There's probably somebody watching this video right now whose Range Rover has already had some type of problem. I see you, Bennett. Those who know what the Lexus LX really is, they get it. Those who don't, won't ever get it. The Lexus LX kind of appeals to someone like me, who would rather drive something that has sort of an actual lineage, an actual pedigree, than some kind of gussied up 7 Series with a horrific face that only a mother could love. In fact, it would be a face no mother could love and would probably cause her to actively try to abandon her baby because she's convinced it's not actually her baby, it's some sort of alien being from another dimension.
Steady, steady.
Another dimension where ugly is the new world currency. I'd be rich. And then there's the perceived reliability. Sure, this is a new platform and it's as yet untested so far, so I'm not going to make any claims that aren't substantiated, but the past results seem good. The Land Cruiser and the previous LX were well established as being some of the most reliable vehicles ever made. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say the odds are good that this one will be too. I mean, let's remember that this is a class of vehicle that the Germans play in, So what is my biggest complaint here? What is my one complaint about the Lexus LX 600? It might not be what you think. If you watch this channel, you know that I'm very tall. I'm 6'6", and my family is also very tall. I have a 6'1" daughter, a 5', well, almost 10 daughter, and then a wife who's 5'9". So the Lexus LX 600 is a little short on space for my tallish family, but that's not my primary concern. It's not huge inside, but I tend to think of it as sort of a gigantic 2-row SUV, not a 3-row SUV. It does have a 3rd row, and that 3rd row does fold flat, but it's kind of laughable for anyone who's not an infant. Might bother the person who sits behind me though, which is basically impossible. Check out my previous video on the LX600 to sort of see a little bit more about that. No, I'm not a huge fan of the 10-speed automatic, so there's nothing inherently wrong with it. Once it gets up to speed, it's actually quite smooth. Smooth as butter, smooth as you would expect a Lexus to be. My problem is more at like lower speeds, when you're in sort of creeping traffic and you abruptly kind of lift off the throttle only to get back on the throttle. It can have a little hesitation, it can be a little erratic. If you're coming up to a stop and you decelerate rather quickly and then you try to start going soon, like if you come up to a right-hand turn, you check traffic, there's people coming, you need to get going, it can just be a little abrupt, like it's not quite sure what gear to be in. It's not bad, many vehicles exhibit this, but I noticed this in the Toyota Tundra, and I just think that that behavior is a little unbecoming of a giant luxury SUV. Again, once you're up to speed, you have no such issues, so I'm not gonna say that it's a reason to not get this vehicle. That's silly. I would absolutely own this vehicle. It's just something to notice, and it's the one thing for me personally that kind of stuck out about the LX600 as a negative. Keep in mind that I got to experience this vehicle for a while when I was at Destination Outdoor. I drove it multiple times. You can see the previous video that I mentioned for that kind of evaluation. That was my first stint behind the wheel and seeing the LX600 in person. And now that I've lived with it for a week, if you ask me what my #1 problem with it would be, I mean, followed by the gauge cluster. I mean, come on, Lexus, you gotta update that thing. But I'm not cheating. I'm not cheating. I'm not gonna say the gauge cluster. I said one thing and I said I would live with it, so I'm not gonna go there, but come on, Lexus. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this quick video about the Lexus LX600, 5 things I like and 1 thing that I'm not wild about. If you found value in this, please comment and tell me why. Comment if you liked the video. Please consider liking the video. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Please consider sharing it with anyone who might be considering a Lexus LX600, and hopefully you'll stick around. And if you do, I'll catch you in the next video. All right, thanks, peace.